The rain hammered against the diner's windows like thousands of tiny fists demanding entry. I pressed my palm against the cold glass, watching the storm turn the street into a river of neon reflections. Reds and blues bleeding into each other, distorted and drowning. My shift had ended 20 minutes ago, but the downpour showed no mercy, and neither did my reality. "Mama, I'm cold." Emma's small voice cut through the ambient noise of rain and the occasional car splashing past. I turned to see her huddled against the diner's brick wall, her brother Michael pressed against her side. Both of them wore jackets too thin for November, hand-me-downs from the church donation box that had seen better days. Emma's lips held a faint blue tint that made my chest constrict. "I know, baby. Just a few more minutes." I forced brightness into my voice, though we both knew it was a lie. The bus wouldn't come for another 40 minutes, and even then, we'd have a 6-block walk to our apartment. My tips from tonight, a crumpled collection of 1s and 5s, wouldn't stretch to a taxi. They barely stretched to cover the electricity bill. I crouched down, gathering both children against me, trying to share whatever warmth my own thin coat could provide. Michael's teeth chattered against my shoulder. He was 7, too proud to complain, but his small body trembled like a leaf barely clinging to a branch in a storm. The diner's owner, Marcus, had already locked up and left through the back entrance. The neon "Open 24 Hours" sign flickered ironically above us, casting pink shadows across my children's pale faces. I'd worked the double shift, 14 hours of carrying plates, forcing smiles at handsy truckers, and pretending the ache in my feet didn't exist. All for $83 in tips and a wage that was more insult than income. "Tell us a story, Mama," Emma whispered, her breath forming small clouds in the cold air. Before I could answer, the sound of an engine purred through the rain. Smooth, expensive, entirely out of place in this neighborhood of pawn shops and liquor stores. A black SUV glided to a stop in front of the diner, followed by a second identical vehicle. The windows were tinted so dark, they looked like sheets of obsidian. I instinctively pulled my children closer. The back door of the first SUV opened, and a man stepped out. Even through the rain, even in the dim light, his presence was immediate and overwhelming. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than I made in 6 months, perfectly tailored to a frame that spoke of both power and violence held in careful check. Dark hair, slightly wet from the rain, framed a face that belonged on magazine covers. Sharp jawline, full lips, eyes so dark they seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. But it wasn't his beauty that made my breath catch. It was the way everyone and everything seemed to bend toward him. 2 men emerged from the second vehicle, broad-shouldered, alert, hands resting casually near their waists in a way that screamed danger. They scanned the street with professional precision while he stood utterly still, focused entirely on the diner's entrance. Then his gaze found us, those dark eyes locked onto mine, and the world narrowed to that single point of connection. I couldn't look away, shouldn't look away. His expression revealed nothing, no smile, no frown, just an intensity that made my pulse race for reasons I couldn't name. He studied us with the attention a jeweler might give a rare stone. Thorough, assessing, calculating value. "Mama?" Michael's voice trembled with more than cold now. The man moved, and his bodyguards shifted with him, creating a choreographed dance of protection. He crossed the sidewalk with fluid grace, each step deliberate and unhurried despite the rain soaking his expensive suit. Water ran down his face, but he didn't seem to notice or care. His focus remained absolute. He stopped 3 feet away, up close. I could see details I'd missed. A small scar cutting through his left eyebrow. The faint scent of cedar and something darker, gunpowder maybe, or just danger made tangible. His presence was a physical thing, pressing against me like a wave. "How long have you been standing here?" His voice was low, measured, with an accent I couldn't quite place. European, maybe Russian, smoothed by years in America. "We're fine," I said quickly, hating how small my voice sounded. "Just waiting for the bus." His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "In this storm, with children." It wasn't a question, and the way he said children, with a softness that didn't match the hardness of everything else about him, made something in my chest twist. "The bus will be here soon." Another lie. But what else could I say? That I'd spent my last $20 on Michael's asthma medication? That the electricity would be shut off if I didn't pay by Friday? That standing in the rain with my babies was just another Tuesday in a life full of impossible choices? He studied me for another long moment, then turned his head slightly. One of his guards immediately stepped forward. "Sir?" "The car." 2 words spoken quietly, but they carried the weight of absolute authority. "We don't need—" I started, but he'd already turned back to me, and the words died in my throat. "You're shivering. All of you." He stated it as fact, irrefutable. "Come here." The command was soft but unmistakable. Not a request, not a suggestion. An order delivered by someone accustomed to immediate obedience. Every instinct I possessed screamed danger. Strange men in expensive cars didn't help waitresses and their children out of kindness. This was how women disappeared, how children vanished into nightmares. I'd read the stories, watched the news, knew better than to trust beautiful monsters in tailored suits, but Emma's shivers had become violent tremors against my side, and Michael's breathing had taken on that wheezing quality that preceded an asthma attack. The rain showed no signs of stopping, and the bus, if it came at all, wouldn't arrive for 35 more minutes. I appreciate the offer, but it wasn't an offer. He cut me off gently, the way one might interrupt a child's protest. Then, surprising me, he crouched down, bringing himself to Emma's eye level. His expensive suit pants touched the wet pavement without hesitation. "You're cold, aren't you, little one?" Emma nodded, her wide eyes fixed on his face with the wonder children reserve for things both fascinating and frightening. "My car is warm, very warm, and dry." He spoke to her, but his words were meant for me. "Your mother is trying to protect you, which is admirable, but sometimes protection means accepting help, even from strangers." The irony wasn't lost on me. This man, whose very aura radiated danger, lecturing me about protection. "We don't know you," I said, proud that my voice remained steady. "No." He straightened, his full height once again towering over us. "You don't. But you know cold. You know what happens when children stay wet in November. You know your options." He was right, and we both knew it. Michael coughed, a tight wheezing sound that made my decision before my brain could catch up. "Just a ride," I heard myself say, "to the bus station on Maple Street." Something flickered in those dark eyes. Amusement? Satisfaction? It vanished too quickly to name. "Of course." He gestured toward the SUV, and one of his guards immediately opened the back door. Warm air billowed out, carrying with it the scent of leather and luxury. "After you." I gathered my children close, whispering fiercely, "Stay near me. Don't talk to anyone. And if I say run, you run. Understand?" They nodded, solemn and scared, and so trusting that my heart broke a little. The interior of the SUV was like stepping into another world. Heated leather seats, soft lighting, space enough for 6 people comfortably. I'd never been in a vehicle like this, not even close. The contrast between this cocoon of warmth and wealth and the cold sidewalk we'd just left felt obscene. Emma and Michael pressed against me, their trembling slowly subsiding as heat seeped into their small bodies. The man climbed in beside us, maintaining a careful distance, while one guard took the driver's seat and the other settled into the passenger side. The second SUV pulled away, disappearing into the rain. "Heat," the man said quietly, and immediately warm air increased, flowing from vents I couldn't see. We sat in silence for a moment, just the sound of rain against bulletproof glass, and the quiet purr of the engine. I studied him from the corner of my eye, trying to understand what he was. His hands rested calmly on his knees, but I noticed his right hand bore scarred knuckles, fighter's hands. Killer's hands, maybe. "Maple Street Station," he told his driver, then turned his attention back to us, to me, specifically. "You work at the diner?" "Yes." I kept my answers short, giving nothing away. "How long?" 3 years. "And before that? Why does it matter?" The question came out sharper than I intended, fear making me bold or stupid. I wasn't sure which. His lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but close. "Curiosity. You have the hands of someone who works hard. The eyes of someone who's seen too much. and the courage to stand in the rain rather than accept help from a stranger. I find that interesting. We're not interesting. We're just trying to get home. Perhaps. He reached forward, pressing a button that made a small refrigerator compartment slide open. Inside were bottles of water, juice boxes, and what looked like expensive chocolates. Your children should have something warm. There's hot chocolate in the thermos. Emma's eyes went wide, but she looked at me for permission. I hesitated, then nodded. The man poured 2 cups of steaming hot chocolate with the care of someone performing a sacred ritual, then handed them to my children. His fingers, I noticed, were steady, controlled. Everything about him was controlled. "Thank you," Emma whispered, her small hands wrapping around the cup. "You're welcome, little one." His voice gentled in a way that made him seem almost human. Almost. Michael sipped his chocolate, color slowly returning to his cheeks. I watched them warm up, feeling my own body thaw in the vehicle's embrace, and tried not to think about how easily I'd gotten into a car with a stranger. How all my warnings to my children about stranger danger had evaporated under the weight of necessity. The man pulled out a phone, sleek, expensive, one of several I noticed in his jacket, and typed something quickly. His guard in the passenger seat tensed slightly, receiving some message I couldn't see, then relaxed. We were passing through a nicer part of town now. Buildings that had been renovated rather than abandoned. Cars that cost more than some houses. The bus station on Maple Street was nowhere near here. "This isn't the way to Maple Street," I said, trying to keep panic from my voice. "No," he agreed calmly. "It's not." My heart slammed against my ribs. "You said—" "I said I would take you. I didn't specify where." He turned to face me fully, and I saw something in his expression that was worse than anger or malice. Interest. Real, focused interest. "The bus station is closed. Water main break flooded the building 2 hours ago. I'm taking you home. You don't know where I live. 1247 Ashwood Avenue, apartment 3B. He said it like reciting a phone number, casual and certain. The air left my lungs. "How?" "Your name tag. Sarah Mitchell." It wasn't difficult. He watched my fear with the patience of a predator that knows its prey has nowhere to run. "You have 2 children, Emma and Michael. You work doubles at Marcus's diner 3 times a week. You take the number 12 bus. You live in a building with a broken elevator and a landlord who should be arrested for negligence." Each fact he listed felt like a violation, like his words were hands stripping away the anonymity I'd hidden behind. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "Please," I whispered, "just let us out. We'll walk." "In the rain? After I've already brought you this far?" He shook his head slowly. "No, Sarah. I'm taking you home safely. All of you." That's not a negotiation. The way he said my name, familiar, possessive, like he'd known me for years rather than minutes, made my skin prickle with awareness. This wasn't kindness. This was something else entirely, something dangerous wrapped in expensive packaging. But what terrified me most was the part of me, small but growing, that wanted to trust him. Wanted to believe that someone, anyone, might actually help without expecting payment I couldn't afford to give. The SUV turned onto Ashwood Avenue, and my heart sank further. The man looked out the window at the building I called home. Peeling paint, cracked steps, windows covered in cardboard and hope. In the reflection of the glass, I saw his jaw tighten. When we stopped, neither of his guards moved to open the door. They waited, and I realized with creeping dread that this moment, this decision, was entirely mine to make. Step out of this warm, safe vehicle into my cold, broken reality, or stay and discover what price this beautiful, dangerous man expected for his kindness. The rain continued to fall, washing the street clean of everything but choices, and the weight of my children against my side felt heavier than ever before. "Come here," he said again, softer this time, and I realized he was offering his hand to help me from the vehicle, a gentleman's gesture that felt like a trap closing around my wrist. I didn't take his hand. Instead, I gathered Emma and Michael against me and slid toward the door, maintaining as much distance as possible from the man whose dark eyes tracked my every movement. The guard in the driver's seat finally moved, opening the door from outside, and cold air rushed in to replace the warmth we'd been cocooned in. "Thank you for the ride," I said, my voice brittle with false politeness. "We can manage from here. Can you?" 2 words, spoken so quietly I almost missed them beneath the sound of rain, but the challenge in them was unmistakable. I paused, 1 foot already on the wet pavement, and made the mistake of looking back at him. He sat perfectly still in that expensive suit, surrounded by luxury that made my life look like a bad joke, but his expression held something I hadn't expected. Not threat, not amusement, but genuine curiosity mixed with what might have been concern. It was the concern that frightened me most, because it suggested he saw more than I wanted anyone to see. "We've been managing," I said, lifting my chin. "We'll keep managing." In an apartment with no heat, again, not a question. A statement delivered with the certainty of someone who'd already gathered every fact about my existence. "The landlord disconnected it last week for non-payment. The building inspector has been called 4 times this month, and yet, you're managing." My face burned despite the cold. "How do you—" "Sarah." He leaned forward slightly, and the movement brought him into the light spilling from a street lamp. It illuminated the sharp planes of his face, the intensity in his eyes. "Let me be very clear. I don't do things halfway. When something catches my interest, I learn everything. Every detail. Every vulnerability. We're not your business," I whispered, but even I could hear how weak it sounded. "No," he agreed. "Not yet." The yet hung between us like a promise and a threat. Emma shivered against my side, and reality crashed back. I was standing in the rain arguing with a stranger while my children froze. Whatever game this man was playing, whatever interest he'd developed, I couldn't afford to engage. Survival didn't leave room for mysteries or dangerous men in expensive cars. "Goodbye," I said firmly, pulling my children toward the building's entrance. "Tomorrow," he called after me. "I'll return tomorrow." I didn't acknowledge the words, didn't turn around, just kept walking until we were inside the building's shabby lobby with its flickering lights and smell of mold. Only then did I allow myself to look back through the grimy window. The SUV remained at the curb, engine running, dark and sleek against the decay of Ashwood Avenue. I couldn't see inside through the tinted windows, but I felt his gaze like a physical touch, watching, waiting, claiming something I hadn't offered to give. Then the vehicle pulled away, smooth and silent, and I was left standing in the cold lobby with my children, and a feeling that my life had just tilted in a direction I couldn't control. The apartment was exactly as cold as he'd said it would be. I got the kids into dry clothes, wrapped them in every blanket we owned, and made hot water with our small electric kettle, one luxury I couldn't live without. We huddled together on the couch, sipping cheap instant soup, pretending the cold wasn't seeping through the walls. "Mama," Emma said, her voice small, "that man was scary." "I know, baby. But he was nice too. He gave us hot chocolate. Sometimes scary people can seem nice." I pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her damp hair. That's what makes them dangerous. Michael, always more observant than his 7 years should allow, looked up at me with eyes too old. "Are we in trouble?" "No, sweetheart. We're safe, I promise." Another lie to add to my collection. Because I didn't feel safe. I felt like a rabbit that had been spotted by a wolf, released for now, but marked, claimed, the way that man had said my name, like he owned it, like he owned me. I shook off the thought and focused on getting my children to bed. Their room was smaller than most people's closets, barely enough space for the twin mattresses I'd found at a garage sale. But we'd made it home. Posters Emma had drawn, glow-in-the-dark stars Michael had arranged in constellations. Proof that even in poverty, children found ways to dream. After they fell asleep, I allowed myself to fall apart. I sat on my own mattress. No frame, just the thin cushion on the floor, and counted my tips again. $83. The electricity bill was $90. The landlord wanted $200 for last month's rent. The heat wouldn't be turned back on until I paid $150, and we needed food, medicine for Michael's asthma, new shoes for Emma, whose toes were pressing against the worn fabric of her current pair. The math didn't work. It never worked. I'd been a different person once. Sarah Mitchell, marketing associate at a firm downtown, engaged to a man who promised forever. I'd had plans, savings, a future that looked bright and certain. Then David's gambling debts caught up with him. Then the lies unraveled. Then he disappeared with every penny we had, leaving behind nothing but an engagement ring I'd pawned for 3 months of rent, and the shocking revelation that I was pregnant. 3 years of fighting to survive. 3 years of watching my dreams shrink to the size of keeping my children fed and warm. 3 years of becoming invisible, just another struggling single mother in a city full of them, until tonight. Until those dark eyes had seen me on a rainy sidewalk and decided I was interesting. I should have felt afraid. I did feel afraid, but underneath the fear was something else. Something I hated to acknowledge, a tiny spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, someone with power and resources had noticed us, had seen us freezing, and decided to care. That kind of hope was dangerous. More dangerous than the man himself. I finally fell asleep as dawn broke, still wearing my diner uniform, too exhausted to dream. The knock came at exactly 9 in the morning. I jerked awake, disoriented and aching from the thin mattress. Emma and Michael were already up, eating cereal with water because we were out of milk. They looked toward the door with wide eyes. We never got visitors. I approached cautiously, peering through the peephole. 2 men stood in the hallway, not the same guards from last night, but cut from the same cloth. Broad shoulders, alert postures, expensive suits that didn't belong in this building. "Ms. Mitchell," one of them said, his voice carrying clearly through the cheap door. "We're here on behalf of Mr. Volkov. We have a delivery." Volkov. Finally, a name for the stranger. It sounded Russian, wealthy, exactly like someone who traveled with armed guards and knew things he shouldn't. "I didn't order anything," I called back. "Nevertheless, we have instructions." I opened the door a crack, keeping the chain lock engaged. The hallway was filled with boxes, at least a dozen of them, professionally wrapped, expensive looking. Behind the guards, I saw Mrs. Chen from 3D peeking out, her wrinkled face alight with curiosity. What is all this? Clothing for the children, winter coats, proper shoes, groceries, space heaters. The guard consulted a tablet, and a payment to your landlord covering 3 months of rent and restoration of heat to the apartment. My breath caught. "No, absolutely not. Take it all back. I'm afraid that's not possible. The payment has already been made. The landlord accepted 30 minutes ago." "Then you can—" "Mama?" Emma appeared beside me, staring at the boxes with wonder. "Are those presents?" "No, baby. They're a mistake." "They're not a mistake, Ms. Mitchell." The guard's expression remained professionally neutral. Mr. Volkov was very specific about his instructions. He saw children in need and chose to help. Refusing would be unwise. The threat was subtle but clear. This wasn't a gift. It was a claim, a statement. I'd entered his car, accepted his help, and now there were strings I couldn't see but could definitely feel tightening around me. "I want to speak to him," I said, my voice shaking with anger and fear and something else I refused to name. "To Mr. Volkov. Now." The guard's expression didn't change, but he touched his earpiece briefly. He anticipated this request. "He'll be here within the hour." I stopped, processing. "He's coming here? To this building?" "Yes, ma'am." I looked at the boxes, at my children's hopeful faces, at the guards who radiated patient inevitability. Then I made a decision I knew I'd regret. "Fine. Bring the boxes in. But everything else? Tell him everything else? Is going back." They moved with military efficiency, filling my tiny apartment with luxuries I'd never dreamed of affording. Winter coats in Emma and Michael's exact sizes, boots that looked warm and waterproof, bags of groceries, real food, not the cheap pasta and ramen I usually managed, 2 space heaters that promised warmth I'd almost forgotten existed. And sitting on top of one box, a single black envelope with my name written in elegant script. I waited until the guards left, until Emma and Michael were distracted by their new coats, before opening it. Inside was a card, heavy stock, expensive, with a short message in the same elegant handwriting. "Children should not suffer for their mother's pride. Accept this small kindness, Sarah. More will follow whether you wish it or not. You've already caught my attention. Now you must deal with the consequences. D. Volkov." My hands trembled as I reread the words. The arrogance of it, the possessive certainty, as if I were a problem he'd decided to solve, a puzzle he'd chosen to work on without my consent. A small kindness. This invasion of privacy, this obliteration of my autonomy. He called it kindness. I crumpled the card in my fist, then carefully smoothed it out again. Destroying it wouldn't change what it represented. Wouldn't change the fact that I'd seen the wonder on my children's faces when they touched those warm coats. Wouldn't change the reality that the heat would be turned back on, that we'd have food for more than just a few desperate days. 53 minutes later, another knock. This time, I knew who it would be before I opened the door. Dmitry Volkov stood in my hallway looking entirely out of place and somehow perfectly at ease. He wore a different suit, charcoal gray, impeccably tailored, and the same aura of controlled danger. Behind him, 2 guards maintained their watchful positions. Sarah. My name on his lips sent shivers down my spine. May I come in? No. His eyebrow lifted slightly, the one with the scar cutting through it. We should talk. We have nothing to talk about. Thank you for your kindness. I forced the word out, but I can't accept any of this. It's too much. It's inappropriate. Inappropriate. He tested the word like wine he was considering. Your children were freezing. Your apartment had no heat. You were one crisis away from complete disaster. Which part of addressing that is inappropriate? The part where you decided to do it without asking. The part where you had me investigated. The part where you show up acting like you own. I stopped, swallowing hard. I don't know you. I don't know what you want. And I don't trust this. Is smart, he said, and something that might have been approval flickered in his dark eyes. You shouldn't trust me. I'm not a good man, Sarah. I'm actually quite dangerous, but I keep what's mine safe, protected, provided for. I'm not yours. Not yet, he said again, echoing his words from the night before. But you will be. The certainty in his voice made my heart race. That's insane. You can't just decide, I can decide anything I want. That's what power means. He took a step closer, and I resisted the urge to back away. But I'm not forcing anything. I'm simply making my intentions clear. I saw you last night. Vulnerable, fighting, refusing to break even when you should. And I decided you were worth protecting. Your children were worth protecting. We don't need protection. We need to be left alone. You need both. His gaze moved past me, taking in my apartment with its peeling paint and second-hand furniture and the new boxes of supplies his men had delivered. You're drowning, Sarah, fighting so hard to keep your head above water that you can't see the current pulling you under. I'm offering you a lifeline. Lifelines come with strings. Everything comes with strings. He smiled then, and it transformed his face from merely handsome to devastating. Mine are just more expensive than most. Emma appeared in the doorway, wearing her new coat and boots, her face lit with pure joy. Mama, look, they fit perfect. Can I keep them, please? I looked at my daughter, then at Volkov, who watched Emma with an expression I couldn't quite read. Something soft, something almost protective. See? He said quietly. Your pride or her warmth, which do you choose? It was emotional manipulation, blatant and effective, and I hated that it worked. Fine, I whispered. The children can keep the clothes, the food, the heaters, but that's all. No more gifts. No more whatever this is. Whatever this is, he repeated, amusement coloring his tone. We'll see, Sarah. We'll see what this becomes. He turned to leave, his guards falling into formation around him. But at the threshold, he paused. One more thing. You're not working at that diner anymore. I've arranged a position for you at one of my restaurants. Better pay, better hours, health insurance for the children. You start Monday. You can't just... I can. I did. The choice is yours to accept or refuse, but the diner already has your replacement. He looked back at me, and the intensity in his gaze stole my breath. I take care of what's mine, Sarah. Get used to it. Then he was gone, leaving me standing in my apartment surrounded by evidence of his intrusion, his claim, his absolute certainty that I belonged to him. And the terrifying part was how much I wanted to believe that someone caring, even someone dangerous, might be better than caring for everything alone. I didn't go to the new job Monday. Instead, I showed up at Marcus's diner at 5 in the morning, my uniform pressed and my resolve hardened. Whatever game Dmitry Volkov was playing, I wouldn't be a piece on his board. I'd made my own way for 3 years. I'd keep making it. Marcus looked up from the coffee machine when I walked in, surprise and something like pity crossing his weathered face. "Sarah, I thought—" "I'm here for my shift," I interrupted, tying my apron with hands that only trembled slightly. "There's no shift, sweetheart. I got a call Saturday. Very generous offer for your contract buyout, plus a bonus if I hired your replacement immediately. Man said you'd be moving to better opportunities." Marcus wiped down a counter that was already clean, not meeting my eyes. "That kind of money I couldn't refuse. I got 3 kids of my own, you understand." "How much?" My voice came out flat. 50,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. $50,000 to a man like Volkov was probably pocket change. To Marcus, it was life-changing. To me, it was a cage door slamming shut. "I'm sorry, Sarah. Really, I am." But he made it clear. "You work for him now, or you don't work at all." I left without another word, my legs carrying me blindly through the cold morning streets. The sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that seemed obscene in their beauty. How dare the world be beautiful when mine was being systematically dismantled? My phone buzzed. An unknown number, though I knew exactly who it was before I answered. "You went to the diner." Volkov's voice, smooth and unsurprised. "I expected that. You had no right." "I had every right. That place was beneath you. Drunks grabbing at you, poverty wages, no future. You deserve better. You don't get to decide what I deserve." I was shouting now, standing on a street corner while early commuters hurried past. "You don't get to destroy my life and call it helping." Silence on the other end, long enough that I thought he might have hung up. Then, "Where are you?" "That's none of your—" "Sarah." The command in his voice made me stop mid-sentence. "Where are you?" "Corner of 5th and Madison," I admitted, hating myself for the surrender. "Stay there." The line went dead. I should have run, should have gotten on the nearest bus and disappeared into the city's vastness. But my feet remained rooted to the concrete as if Volkov's words had been chains. 10 minutes later, the now familiar black SUV pulled up to the curb. He emerged alone this time, no guards, just him in a black coat that probably cost more than my monthly rent used to be. The morning light caught the sharp angles of his face, making him look like some dark angel sent to test me. "Get in the car, Sarah." "No. We're having this conversation either here, where everyone can watch, or in private. Your choice." His eyes scanned the growing foot traffic, the people who were starting to stare. "But we are having it." Pride warred with practicality. Pride lost. I got in the car. The interior was warm, leather soft beneath me, the door closing with that expensive whisper of money well spent. Volkov slid in beside me, close enough that I could smell cedar and gunpowder again, far enough that we weren't touching, yet the space between us felt charged. "Dangerous. Drive," he told someone I couldn't see. The car pulled smoothly into traffic. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere we can talk honestly." He turned to face me fully, and I forced myself to meet his gaze. "You're angry. Good. Anger means you still have fight in you. You destroyed my job. You manipulated my boss. You're trying to control my life. I'm trying to protect you," he interrupted, his voice sharp. "That diner was a lawsuit waiting to happen. 2 women have filed harassment charges against customers in the past year. The health inspector overlooks violations because Marcus pays him off. And your tips were being skimmed by the night manager. 30% off the top, every shift." I blinked. "That's not— How do you know that?" "I know everything, Sarah. I told you that." He leaned back, his expression unreadable. "The job I've arranged pays $60,000 a year. Health insurance that actually covers your son's asthma medication. Childcare services. Flexible hours. You think I'm controlling you? I'm giving you options you've never had." "Options I didn't ask for." "No," he agreed. "You didn't ask. Because you've spent so long barely surviving that you've forgotten how to want more, how to demand more." The words cut deeper than I wanted to admit. The car turned onto a tree-lined street where buildings gave way to actual houses. Mansions, really, with gates and gardens and the kind of wealth that built empires. "I can't accept this," I whispered. "Whatever you're offering, whatever you think this is, I can't." "Why not?" "Because nothing is free. Because men like you don't help women like me without expecting something in return. Because I've learned that debt to the wrong person is worse than poverty." The car stopped in front of a wrought iron gate that opened automatically. Beyond it, a stone mansion rose like something from a dream, or a nightmare, depending on your perspective. Pristine lawns, fountain in the circular driveway, windows that sparkled in the morning sun. "You're right," Volkov said quietly. "Nothing is free. I do expect something in return." My heart hammered against my ribs. "What?" "Trust." He said it like a confession, like the word cost him something. "I expect you to trust that I won't hurt you or your children. That my protection is real. That when I say I take care of what's mine, I mean it absolutely. I'm not yours. You keep saying that." He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. The gesture was intimate, possessive, and sent electricity racing down my spine. "But you're wrong, Sarah. You became mine the moment I saw you shivering in the rain, choosing your children's comfort over your own. The moment you looked at me with fear and defiance in equal measure. The moment you walked into my world and made me want something I didn't know I was missing. You don't know me. I know you're 28. I know you were engaged to David Chen, who gambled away your savings and disappeared 18 months before Emma was born. I know you have a degree in marketing you can't use because childcare costs more than entry-level positions pay. I know you haven't bought yourself new clothes in 2 years. I know you sleep 3 hours a night because you're terrified of missing a shift, missing a payment, missing the moment when it all falls apart." His hand cupped my cheek, thumb tracing my cheekbone with devastating gentleness. "I know you're drowning, Sarah, and I'm not going to let you drown anymore." Tears burned behind my eyes. "Why? Why do you care?" Something shifted in his expression. Pain, maybe, or memory. Because 7 years ago, I watched my sister drown, watched her struggle alone, too proud to ask for help, too afraid of my world to accept it. And when she died, when some bastard she owed money to decided she wasn't worth keeping alive, I learned that protection isn't about waiting to be asked. It's about seeing someone vulnerable and deciding they matter. The raw honesty in his voice shook something loose in my chest. This wasn't just about control or possession. This was about something deeper, darker. Guilt transformed into obsession. Loss channeled into protection. "I'm not your sister," I said softly. "No, you're not." His thumb traced my lower lip and I forgot how to breathe. "But you're in my world now, whether you planned it or not. And in my world, there are rules. Rule 1. What's mine stays safe. Rule 2. No one hurts what's mine without consequences. Rule 3. You stop fighting me and start accepting that your life just changed. And if I refuse, then I'll wait. I'm a very patient man, Sarah. I've built an empire on patience and timing." He leaned closer, his breath warm against my skin. "But understand this. I've decided you're worth protecting, worth claiming, worth keeping. And I always get what I decide to keep." The car door opened, startling us both. A woman stood there, 50s, elegant, professional, with a warm smile that seemed genuine. "Ms. Mitchell, I'm Elena, Mr. Volkov's household manager. Welcome. Your children arrived a few minutes ago." "My children?" I jerked toward Volkov, panic flooding through me. "What did you—" "Relax," he said, his hand on my arm keeping me in place. "I sent a car to pick them up from your apartment. Mrs. Chen was happy to help. They're inside having breakfast with my chef. Real food, not cereal with water, and playing in the game room. They're perfectly safe. You had them brought here without asking me?" "Yes, no apology, no shame, just fact." I shoved past him, stumbling out of the car and following Elena's gesture toward the mansion's entrance. The foyer was enormous, marble floors, crystal chandelier, artwork that probably cost more than I'd make in a lifetime, but I barely registered the wealth because I could hear them. Emma's laughter, bright and free, and Michael's excited voice saying something about video games. I followed the sound to a kitchen that could have serviced a restaurant. Stainless steel appliances, an island bigger than my entire apartment's kitchen. And at the breakfast bar, my children. Emma had chocolate on her face from what looked like a genuine pain au chocolat, and Michael was drinking orange juice from a glass that sparkled like crystal. They looked warm, fed, happy. "Mama!" Emma spotted me and ran over, wrapping sticky hands around my waist. "This place is amazing. There's a room with just games, and Mr. Dimitri said we could play anything we want, and the food is so good, and Mr. Dimitri?" I looked up to find Volkov standing in the doorway, watching my children with that same soft expression I'd glimpsed before. "I thought it might be less frightening than Mr. Volkov," he said. Was I wrong? No, he wasn't wrong. That was the problem. Everything he did, every manipulation, came wrapped in logic I couldn't argue with. Comfort for my children, safety for our family, a better life than I could provide alone. The cage he was building was lined with silk and gold, but it was still a cage. "We need to talk," I said quietly. "Alone." Volkov nodded to Elena, who immediately engaged my children in conversation about what other breakfast items they might like to try. He led me through the house to a study lined with books and dominated by a massive desk. The door closed with a soft click that sounded like finality. "You can't just take my children," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "You can't make decisions about our lives without consulting me. That's not protection, Dimitri. That's kidnapping." "Is it?" He leaned against the desk, arms crossed. "Or is it providing them with a hot meal and a safe space while their mother and I have an adult conversation about their future? Their future is not yours to plan. Then plan it yourself." He gestured to a chair. "Sit down, Sarah. Let's talk about what you actually want. Not what you think you should want, not what pride tells you to refuse. What do you actually want for yourself and your children?" I remained standing, too agitated to sit. "I want independence. I want to provide for my family myself. I want to not owe anyone anything. Noble, impractical. Try again. You arrogant." "I'm arrogant, yes. Also realistic." He moved closer, and I held my ground though everything in me screamed to retreat. Independence when you're one emergency from homelessness isn't independence. It's delusion. Pride when your children are cold isn't noble. It's stupid. The words were harsh, but his tone was almost gentle, like a doctor delivering a difficult diagnosis. Painful, but necessary. "So what?" I demanded. "I just surrender? Let you control everything? Become some kind of kept woman?" Kept woman. His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Is that what you think this is, isn't it?" He studied me for a long moment, something calculating in his dark eyes. Then he moved to the desk, pulled out a folder, and handed it to me. "Open it." Inside were documents, legal documents, an employment contract for the restaurant position. Everything he'd promised in writing, a lease for an apartment in a secure building, my name on it, rent paid for a year, bank statements showing accounts opened in my name, modest but stable, educational trust funds established for Emma and Michael, and at the bottom, a contract of a different kind, protection agreement. Volkov said as I read, "You accept my help, job, housing, security, resources for your children. In exchange, you agree to let me protect you, to trust my judgment in matters of safety, to not disappear or run without discussion. This is insane. This is business." He took the contract from my shaking hands. "I'm a businessman, Sarah. I make deals. This is a deal. Your trust for my protection, your presence in my life, for my resources in yours. A fair exchange. And if I refuse, then I'll be disappointed, but I won't force you. The job offer stands regardless. The apartment lease is month to month if you prefer. The trust funds for your children are irrevocable. They're theirs no matter what you decide." He stepped closer, crowding my space until I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. "But I'll keep watching. Keep protecting from a distance. Keep waiting for the moment you realize you can't do this alone anymore. I've been doing it alone for 3 years. And look where it's gotten you." His hand cupped my face again, that same devastating gentleness. Exhausted, scared. one crisis from collapse. Is that really what you want? Or do you want what I'm offering? Security, safety, a chance for your children to have the life they deserve. I closed my eyes, unable to hold his gaze, while my world rearranged itself around his words. Every logical argument I had dissolved under the weight of reality. He was right. I was drowning, and he was offering a lifeline that came with chains I couldn't quite see, but definitely felt. "What do you get out of this?" I whispered. "Really?" "You," he said simply. "Your presence. Your trust. The knowledge that you're safe and cared for. The right to protect what I've claimed." His thumb traced my jaw. "And eventually, if I'm patient enough, if I prove myself worthy, your heart." My eyes flew open. "You can't be serious." "I'm always serious, Sarah, especially about things I want." His smile was dangerous, beautiful. "And I want you. Not just your body, though I won't pretend that's not part of it. I want your strength, your defiance, your fierce protection of your children. I want the woman who would rather freeze than accept help from a stranger. I want all of you." "You're insane." "Probably." He released me, stepping back to give me space I desperately needed. "But I'm insane with resources, power, and absolute certainty. Take the deal, Sarah. Let me give you and your children the life you deserve. And in time, maybe you'll stop looking at me like a threat and start seeing me as something else." "Like what?" "Like someone who would burn the world down to keep you safe." The words should have terrified me. Instead, they sent heat pooling low in my belly, desire mixing with fear in a way that made my head spin. "I need time," I heard myself say, "to think, to process." "Of course." He gestured toward the door. "Stay for breakfast. Let your children enjoy themselves. Elena will drive you home whenever you're ready. And tomorrow, you start your new job whether you sign the contract or not." "Dimitri, tomorrow, Sarah, one step at a time." He moved to open the door, pausing with his hand on the knob. "But understand, time doesn't change the inevitable. You're mine. The only question is how long it takes you to accept it." Then he was gone, leaving me alone in his study with a contract that promised everything I needed and threatened everything I'd fought to maintain. My independence for my children's security, my freedom for their future, my heart for his protection, and the terrifying realization that I was already halfway to saying yes. The new job started exactly as Dimitri had promised. Luminosa was nothing like Marcus's diner. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the waterfront, tables dressed in white linen, a kitchen that gleamed with professional precision. The staff wore actual uniforms, crisp black shirts and tailored pants, not the stained polyester I'd grown accustomed to. And the clientele, they were the kind of people I used to serve coffee to in my old marketing job, back when I'd been one of them. My manager, a sharp-eyed woman named Victoria, showed me to the employee lounge on my first day. Inside were lockers, comfortable seating, and a bulletin board announcing benefits I'd thought were mythical. Health insurance that started immediately, paid sick days, a retirement plan. "Mr. Volkov takes care of his people," Victoria said, watching me process everything. "Show up on time, do your job well, and you'll never want for anything, betray his trust." She let the sentence hang, unfinished but clear. "I'm just here to work," I said quietly. "That's what they all say." Her smile was knowing. "But you're different. You're the first person he's personally placed here. The first one he's—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Taken an interest in." Heat crept up my neck. "It's not like that. Isn't it?" Victoria's expression softened slightly. "Word of advice, don't fight it too hard. Men like Dmitry Volkov don't take interest lightly, and when they do, resistance only makes them more determined." She left me alone to change into my uniform, but her words echoed in the small space. I caught my reflection in the locker's mirror, dark circles under my eyes from another sleepless night, hair pulled back in a practical bun, the same exhaustion I'd worn for 3 years, but something else too, something new in my expression. Fear, yes, but also anticipation. The shift passed in a blur of orders and smiles and the strange sensation of working somewhere clean, safe, professional. My coworkers were friendly but cautious, as if I were marked by invisible fire. The tips were extraordinary. One table alone left me $80 for a $200 meal. By the end of my first night, I'd made more than I used to make in a week. I was counting my earnings in the lounge when Victoria appeared again. "There's someone here to see you," my heart knew before my brain processed. "I'm not..." "He's waiting in the private dining room." "And Sarah?" Victoria's expression was serious. "When Dmitry Volkov asks to see you, you go." The private dining room was tucked away from the main restaurant, all dark wood and soft lighting, and the kind of intimacy that made my pulse race. Dmitry sat at a table set for two, still in his suit from whatever business had occupied his day. He looked up when I entered, and the intensity in his gaze made me falter. "How was your first day?" he asked, gesturing to the chair across from him. "I'm working." "I can't just..." "Your shift ended 10 minutes ago. Sit, Sarah." I remained standing, arms crossed. "Are you always this controlling?" "Yes." No apology, just truth. "Sit, eat. You haven't had a proper meal today." "How do you know that?" "Because I know you packed crackers and an apple for lunch. I know you gave half your apple to the dishwasher's daughter who was visiting. I know you prioritize everyone's needs above your own." He stood, moving around the table with that fluid grace that spoke of violence held in check. "Now sit, before I make you." The threat shouldn't have sent heat through me, shouldn't have made my knees weak. I sat. Immediately, staff appeared with plates. Seared salmon, roasted vegetables, risotto that smelled like heaven. Wine in crystal glasses, bread still warm from the oven, the kind of meal I'd only served, never eaten. "I can't afford this," I said weakly. "You're not paying. I am." Dmitry returned to his seat, watching me with that predatory patience. "Eat, Sarah. Let me take care of you." Those words, "let me take care of you," they shouldn't have affected me, but I was so tired, so worn down from years of taking care of everything myself. The idea of someone else shouldering even a small burden was intoxicating. I picked up my fork. Dmitry's smile was small, satisfied, like I'd just surrendered something important. Maybe I had. We ate in silence for a while, but it wasn't uncomfortable. His presence had become almost familiar, the way he moved, the intensity of his focus, the sense that everything happening was exactly according to his plan. "The apartment," he said finally. "Have you seen it yet?" I shook my head. "I haven't decided. Decide tonight. Elena has the keys. It's 3 blocks from here, top floor, 2 bedrooms, safe building, good schools nearby." He paused. "Your current landlord received an eviction notice this morning. Building violations, multiple complaints. Everyone's being relocated." I set down my fork carefully. "You did that." I accelerated an inevitable process. That building was a death trap. His tone was matter-of-fact, as if manipulating housing authorities was perfectly normal. "You have until the end of the month to move. The apartment I've arranged is available immediately." "Stop," I said, my voice shaking. "Stop controlling my life. Stop making decisions for me. Stop, no." The single word cut through my rising panic. "I won't stop, Sarah. I won't watch you struggle when I can help. I won't see your children in danger when I can provide safety. I won't..." He stopped, something raw crossing his face. "I won't lose someone else because I was too respectful of their pride to save them." His sister. The woman who drowned while he watched. The ghost that drove every obsessive, controlling gesture. "I'm not her," I said softly, repeating the words from before. "No, you're not." He reached across the table, his hand covering mine. "You're stronger, smarter, more stubborn, which is why I know you'll eventually accept that my protection isn't a cage. It's freedom. Freedom from fear, from poverty, from the constant fight just to survive." "And what do you get?" I pulled my hand away, needing the distance. "You keep saying you want me, but what does that mean? What exactly are you expecting?" "Everything." The word hung between us, heavy with implication. "Your time, your trust, your presence in my life, and eventually, when you're ready, your body." Your heart. Your absolute surrender to the fact that you belong to me. My breath caught. That's insane. Is it? He leaned back, studying me. You've been alone for 3 years, fighting, struggling, sacrificing everything for your children. When was the last time someone took care of you, Sarah? When was the last time you felt safe, protected, desired? Dimitri, I see you. He spoke over my protest, his voice low and intense, not just the exhausted mother or the struggling waitress. I see the woman underneath, intelligent, fierce, beautiful, the woman who deserves to be worshipped, not just tolerated. And I want to be the man who gives you that. Worshipped. The word sent shivers down my spine. This is too fast. Too much. I don't even know you. Then get to know me. He pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. I'm having your things moved to the new apartment tomorrow. Before you argue, he held up a hand. Mrs. Chen has already agreed to supervise. Your children will be at their new school, which I've also arranged. You have the day off to settle in. You can't just, I have, accept it. He stood, buttoning his suit jacket with precise movements. The apartment has everything you need. Furniture, supplies, a laptop for when you're ready to use that marketing degree again. The children's rooms are decorated, but Elena left paint samples if they want to choose their own colors. I stared at him, overwhelmed and angry, and terrified, and something else I refused to acknowledge. Why are you doing this? Because you're mine. He said it like a vow, like truth written in stone, because the moment I saw you shivering in the rain, something in me recognized something in you. A need matching a need. Your vulnerability calling to my protection. Your strength challenging my control. He moved around the table, pulling me to my feet with gentle insistence. I'm doing this because I can't not do it, Sarah. You've gotten under my skin, into my head, and I won't rest until you're safe. Until you're mine completely. His hands framed my face, thumbs tracing my cheekbones with devastating tenderness. We were too close, his body heat warming me, his scent, cedar and danger, making my head spin. What if I run? The question came out barely audible. Then I'll find you. No hesitation, no doubt. I'll always find you, because you're not just some woman I'm interested in, Sarah. You're the woman I've decided to keep. And I keep what's mine. He kissed me then, not asking permission, just taking with the same certainty he approached everything else. His lips were soft but demanding, the kiss itself a claiming, a promise, a threat. I should have pushed him away, should have maintained the boundaries I'd been desperately trying to establish. Instead, I kissed him back. It was like drowning and surfacing simultaneously. His hands in my hair, mine fisted in his shirt, 3 years of loneliness and fear and desperate need pouring into a kiss that shouldn't have felt this right. He tasted like wine and possession, and when he finally pulled back, we were both breathing hard. Tomorrow, he said, his voice rough. You move into the apartment. You let me protect you, and you stop fighting what we both know is inevitable. Then he was gone, leaving me alone with swollen lips and a racing heart, and the terrifying realization that I was already lost. The apartment was beautiful. I stood in the doorway the next morning. Emma and Michael pressed against my sides, and tried to process what I was seeing. Hardwood floors, high ceilings, windows that let in actual sunlight. A kitchen with appliances that worked. A living room with a couch that wasn't held together with duct tape. 2 bedrooms, one painted soft lavender with twin beds and a dollhouse I recognized from Emma's wistful stares in store windows, the other in blue with bunk beds and shelves already loaded with books. Is this really ours, Mama? Michael's voice was hushed, reverent. Yes, baby. This is ours. They exploded into motion, running from room to room, discovering treasures Dimitri had left like breadcrumbs, art supplies, a proper desk for homework, clothes in their exact sizes filling the closets. In my room, our room, I supposed, a queen bed with sheets that felt like silk, a dresser, and on the nightstand, another black envelope. I opened it with trembling fingers. Welcome home, Sarah. This is what being mine looks like. Safety, comfort, everything you and your children deserve. The building has 24-hour security. My men watch the exits. No one will hurt what belongs to me. Tomorrow night, Dinner at my house. 7 p.m. Elena will babysit. This isn't a request. D. I should have been angry. Should have crumpled the note and thrown it away. Instead, I pressed it against my chest and let out a shaky breath that was half laugh, half sob. He was impossible, controlling, arrogant, dangerous. And he was giving me everything I dreamed of during those desperate 3 years. That night, after my children fell asleep in beds that didn't creak, in rooms that were warm and safe, I stood at the window looking out over a neighborhood I'd never imagined living in. My phone buzzed. Sleep well, Solnishko. You're safe now. The Russian endearment, little son, made my heart clench. I typed and deleted 3 responses before settling on, thank you. 3 dots appeared immediately, then, don't thank me yet. Tomorrow, you learn what being mine truly means. I should have been terrified. Instead, I fell asleep with my phone clutched in my hand, and dreams of dark eyes and dangerous promises filling my head. Dimitri's house was even more impressive in the evening. Elena picked me up at 6:30. My children already settled with her daughter for a sleepover they were thrilled about. I'd agonized over what to wear, finally settling on the one dress I owned that wasn't completely worn, a simple black sheath from my old life that still fit if I didn't breathe too deeply. You look beautiful, Elena said kindly, as we drove through gates that opened like they recognized the car. I looked terrified. That too, she smiled. But Mr. Volkov likes that you fight him. Most people just submit immediately. You challenge him. Is that wise? Probably not. But it's definitely interesting. The house glowed with warm light, elegant and imposing. Elena led me inside, through the foyer I remembered, down hallways lined with art I couldn't begin to value. We stopped at a set of double doors. He's waiting in the dining room. Try to relax, Sarah. He won't hurt you. I know. And terrifyingly, I did know. For all his control and manipulation, Dimitri had never once made me feel physically unsafe. Emotionally, though. Emotionally, he was the most dangerous man I'd ever met. I pushed open the doors. The dining room was intimate despite its size. A table set for 2 with candles and flowers and crystal that caught the light. Dimitri stood by the window, a glass of whiskey in his hand, wearing dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. Casual elegance that somehow made him more devastating than the suits. He turned when I entered, and the heat in his gaze nearly made me stumble. Sarah. My name was a caress, a claim. You're here. You didn't really give me a choice, no, he agreed, setting down his glass and moving toward me. I didn't. Because if I'd given you a choice, you would have run. And I'm done watching you run from what you need. He was right. I probably would have run. The smart thing, the safe thing, would have been to maintain distance. But standing there in his dining room, watching him approach with that predatory grace, I realized I was tired of running. Tired of fighting. Tired of being alone. What do you want from me tonight? I asked quietly. Tonight? He stopped in front of me, close enough to touch but not touching. Tonight, I want honesty. No more walls, no more pretending you don't feel this thing between us. Tonight you tell me the truth, all of it. And if I refuse? His smile was dark, dangerous. Then I'll seduce it out of you, 1 kiss at a time, 1 touch at a time, until you're so desperate for me that the truth spills out like a confession. My breath hitched. That's honest, he finished. I promised you honesty, Sarah. I want you. I want you in my bed, in my life, wearing my protection like armor. I want you so completely that the thought of you with anyone else makes me violent. His hand finally touched me, fingertips tracing my collarbone. And you want me too. You're just too afraid to admit it. I barely know you. Then let tonight change that. He took my hand, leading me to the table. Sit, eat, ask me anything you want, and I'll do the same. So I sat. And over a meal prepared by his private chef, course after course of food that tasted like art, I learned about Dmitri Volkov. He'd built his empire from nothing, starting as an enforcer for the Bratva before breaking away to form his own organization, legitimate businesses fronting for less legitimate enterprises. Restaurants, real estate, import, export. All of it covering a network of power that stretched across 3 countries. "You're in the Mafia," I said, testing the word. "I prefer businessman with complicated ethics." His smile was sardonic, but yes, I operate outside the law when the law is insufficient. That doesn't scare me as much as it should. Good, because it's who I am, what I am. He leaned back, studying me. "Your turn. Tell me about David." The name was a punch to the gut. "How do you—" "I know everything, remember, but I want to hear it from you." So I told him. About falling in love with a charming liar, about the gambling debts I didn't know existed until they consumed us, about waking up one morning to find him gone and my bank accounts emptied, about discovering I was pregnant 2 weeks later with no way to contact him, no way to get back what he'd stolen. He took everything. I finished quietly. My savings, my security, my ability to trust, and he left me with 2 beautiful children and nothing else. Dimitri's expression had gone cold. Dangerous. Where is he now? I don't know. Why? Because I'd like to have a conversation with him about the consequences of hurting what's mine. The possessiveness in his voice should have bothered me. Instead, it sent warmth through my chest, the idea that someone would defend me, protect me, care enough to want revenge on my behalf. "He's not worth your time," I said. "You are." "That makes him very much worth my time." Dimitri stood extending his hand. "Dance with me." There's no music. He pulled out his phone, and soft classical music filled the room. Something Russian, haunting, and beautiful. There is now. "Dance with me, Sarah." I took his hand. He pulled me close, one hand at my waist, the other holding mine against his chest. We moved slowly, barely swaying. More embrace than dance, this close. I could feel his heartbeat, steady and strong, could see the flecks of amber in his dark eyes, could smell cedar and danger and something uniquely him. "I'm falling for you," he said softly, honestly. "Probably already fallen. The moment you looked at me with defiance and fear and chose your children over your pride, I was done. You consumed me, Sarah, and I'm not sorry about it." Tears pricked my eyes. "This is crazy. We barely know each other. I know enough. I know you're strong and fierce and too stubborn for your own good. I know you love your children more than anything. I know you haven't let yourself want something just for you in years." His hand tightened on my waist. "Let me be what you want. Let me protect you, provide for you, worship you the way you deserve. And if I can't give you what you need, you already are." He leaned down, his forehead resting against mine. "Every time you fight me, every time you surrender a little, every time you look at me like you are now, like you're terrified and fascinated and falling just as hard as I am, you give me exactly what I need." "Dimitri." He kissed me again, and this time there was no hesitation on my part. I kissed him back with 3 years of loneliness and need, with the desperate desire to be wanted, to be claimed, to be someone's priority. His hands roamed my back, pulling me tighter, and I went willingly, surrendering to the inevitable. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he smiled against my lips. "Say it." He commanded softly. "Say you're mine." I should have resisted, should have maintained my independence. But standing in his arms, feeling wanted and safe and desired for the first time in years, I couldn't find the strength. "I'm yours," I whispered. His smile was triumphant, possessive, beautiful. "Yes," he agreed. "You are." The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of transformation. My life, which had been a constant struggle against the current, suddenly flowed with effortless ease. Emma and Michael thrived in their new school. Quality education, after-school programs, friends whose parents didn't look at us with pity. The apartment became home in ways our old place never had, filled with laughter and warmth and the absence of fear. And Dimitri was everywhere, not physically. His business kept him occupied with meetings and calls and things he never fully explained, but his presence permeated everything. Flowers delivered to the restaurant on my shifts. A new laptop appearing on my desk with a note. "Use that degree, Solnishko. Security." I pretended not to notice, but felt constantly, Men in dark suits maintaining careful distance, watching, protecting. He took me to dinner twice a week, always somewhere private, always with that same intense focus that made me feel like the only person in his world. We talked about everything, my dreams of returning to marketing, his complicated relationship with his father who'd built the original organization, the sister he'd lost, and still mourned. Her name was Katya, he told me one night over wine in his study. She was younger, softer than me. Fell in love with the wrong man, one of my father's competitors. Got caught in the crossfire of a debt she didn't owe. I'm sorry, I said, my hand finding his. I was away, handling business in Moscow. By the time I got back, his jaw tightened. I've spent 7 years making sure it never happens again, that no one under my protection suffers because I wasn't watching carefully enough. Is that what I am? Someone under your protection? You're more than that. He pulled me onto his lap, a gesture that had become familiar, comfortable. You're mine, Sarah. My woman. My obsession. The one person I can't stand the thought of losing. The possessiveness should have scared me. Instead, it made me feel treasured, valued, claimed in a way that satisfied something deep inside I hadn't known was empty. But we hadn't slept together. The tension built between us with every kiss, every touch that stopped just short of crossing that final line. Dmitri was deliberately patient, waiting for something I couldn't quite name, and I was terrified of surrendering that last piece of myself, of admitting that I'd fallen completely for a man whose world was built on danger and violence and control. Everything changed on a Tuesday. I was closing at Luminosa, finishing paperwork in the back office, when Victoria burst through the door. Her face was pale, her usual composure shattered. Sarah, you need to leave. Now. What? Why? There are men outside. Not Mr. Volkov's men. They're asking about you, about your children. Her hands shook as she grabbed my arm. I've already called Mr. Volkov, but you need to get to the panic room until he arrives. Panic room. The words should have seemed ridiculous in a restaurant, but I'd learned enough about Dmitri's world to know every property he owned had contingencies. Victoria rushed me through the kitchen to a door that looked like a supply closet, but opened to reveal a small, secure room with monitors showing every angle of the restaurant. On the screens, I could see them. 4 men in the dining area, radiating menace. One of them I recognized with a shock that stole my breath. David. 3 years older, harder around the edges, but unmistakably the man who'd destroyed my life. And the men with him looked like predators who'd found prey. He found me, I whispered. How did he find me? It doesn't matter. Victoria's voice was steady despite her fear. You're safe here. Mr. Volkov will handle this, but I wasn't thinking about safety. I was thinking about Emma and Michael, asleep in our apartment with Elena watching them. An apartment David could find just as easily as he'd found me, an apartment that suddenly felt exposed, vulnerable, despite all of Dmitri's security. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and called Dmitri. He answered on the first ring. I know. I'm 5 minutes away. Stay in the panic room. My children are surrounded by 6 of my best men. Elena has already moved them to a secure location. They're safe, Sarah. I swear to you, they're safe. The certainty in his voice helped, but terror still clawed at my throat. David's here. He brought men. Dmitri, what does he want? You. Or more accurately, what he thinks you can give him. His voice turned cold, lethal. But he's not getting near you. Stay where you are. Don't open that door for anyone but me. The line went dead. On the monitors, I watched David and his men grow more agitated. They were arguing with the staff, demanding to know where I was. One of them, a thick-necked brute with scarred knuckles, grabbed a waitress and rage flooded through me. I should go out there, I said, before someone gets hurt because of me. Mr. Volkov would kill me if I let you do that. Victoria positioned herself between me and the door. We wait. So we waited. 3 minutes that felt like hours, watching David terrorize my co-workers, watching the situation escalate. Until suddenly, the front door opened and Dmitri walked in. He was alone. No guards visible. Just him in a black suit that made him look like death itself. But the way he moved, the absolute authority in every step, made it clear he didn't need backup. The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. David turned, And even through the monitor, I could see the moment he recognized what he was facing. Fear flashed across his face before arrogance covered it. "You must be Volkov," David said, his voice carrying through the security feed. "We need to talk about Sarah." "No." Dimitri's voice was quiet, conversational. "We need to talk about you leaving my restaurant before I make you regret breathing the same air as her. She's my fiancée. Mother of my children. She's your ex. And those children you abandoned are under my protection now, which means you have precisely 10 seconds to leave before this becomes very unpleasant for you." David laughed. Nervous, forced. "You think you scare me? I have connections, Volkov, people who don't appreciate you moving in on what's mine. Sarah was never yours. You proved that when you stole from her and disappeared." Dimitri moved closer, and I noticed his men had appeared, materializing from shadows, surrounding David's group. "But more importantly, you just made a critical mistake." "What mistake?" "You came to my place, threatened my woman, scared my people." Dimitri's smile was terrifying. "That requires consequences. What happened next was swift and brutal." Dimitri moved like violence made fluid. One moment still, the next driving his fist into David's stomach with precision that folded him in half. David's men tried to intervene, but Dimitri's security was faster, better trained, utterly ruthless. In less than a minute, it was over. David was on his knees, blood dripping from his nose, his men subdued and being dragged toward the exit. Dimitri crouched down, grabbing David's hair to force eye contact. I couldn't hear what he said, but I saw David's face go white with terror, saw him nod frantically, desperately, saw Dimitri release him with obvious disgust. Then Dimitri looked directly at the camera I was watching through, as if he knew exactly where I was. His expression softened slightly, and he gestured, "Come out." I left the panic room on shaking legs, Victoria following. The dining room was being cleaned already, evidence of violence disappearing with professional efficiency. David and his men were gone, and Dimitri stood waiting for me, his knuckles split and bleeding, his suit jacket slightly disheveled. "Sarah." He opened his arms, and I ran to him without thinking. He caught me, held me tight, one hand cradling my head against his chest, while the other pressed against my back. I could feel his heart racing despite his calm exterior, could feel the tension in his muscles slowly releasing. "You're safe," he murmured into my hair. "I've got you. You're safe." "What did you say to him?" "That if he ever comes near you or your children again, I'll make sure he disappears so completely that even God won't find him." His voice was matter of fact, like discussing the weather. "And that the men he owes money to, the ones who sent him looking for you, thinking you might have assets to seize, will be receiving a very generous payment to forget you exist." I pulled back to look at him. "You're paying his debts? I'm paying for your peace of mind. There's a difference." His thumb wiped away tears I hadn't realized were falling. "He's gone, Solnishko. He can't hurt you anymore. How much did you pay? It doesn't matter." "Dimitri." "Sarah." He cupped my face, forcing me to meet his eyes. "How much is your safety worth? Your children's safety? The certainty that the man who destroyed your life can never touch you again?" His jaw tightened. "There isn't enough money in the world to equal that. So whatever I paid, it wasn't enough." The words broke something open in my chest. This man, this dangerous, controlling, obsessive man, had just spent a fortune to protect me from ghosts, had confronted my past with violence and emerged victorious, had proven, in the most concrete way possible, that his promises weren't empty. "Take me home," I whispered. "To your home." His eyes darkened with understanding, with want, with the same desperate need I felt coursing through me. "Sarah, I'm sure. I'm ready. I'm yours." The words came easier now, truth instead of surrender. "Take me home, Dimitri. Show me what being yours really means." His bedroom was all dark wood and masculine elegance, a space that smelled like him, cedar and danger and something uniquely Dimitri. He'd been gentle in the car, holding my hand, asking twice if I was certain. But now, alone in his space with the door closed and his eyes burning into me, gentleness gave way to something rawer. "Last chance," he said, though we both knew it was a formality. "Once I have you, I'm never letting go. Promise." I reached for him, pulling him close by his tie. His kiss was consuming, possessive. Everything I'd been craving for weeks. He backed me toward the bed, hands roaming with purpose now that permission had been granted. My dress disappeared. His doing, though I barely registered how. His shirt followed, and then skin met skin, and I forgot how to think. He worshipped me exactly as he'd promised. Every touch deliberate, every kiss a claim, his hands and mouth learning every inch of me like I was sacred text. And when he finally moved over me, into me, his dark eyes locked on mine with an intensity that stole my breath. Mine, he breathed against my lips. Say it again. Yours, I gasped, lost in sensation, in connection, in the overwhelming rightness of surrendering to him completely. Yours, Dimitri, completely yours. His groan was satisfaction and possession combined, and then there were no more words, just the rhythm of bodies moving together, pleasure building until it crested in waves that left me shaking. He followed moments later, my name a prayer on his lips, his body shuddering against mine. Afterward, he held me against his chest, our breathing slowly synchronizing. His fingers traced patterns on my shoulder, possessive even in gentleness. Move in with me, he said quietly. You and the children. Bring everything here where I can protect you properly. That's moving fast. I don't do slow. Not when I've found what I want. He tilted my face up to his. I love you, Sarah. I'm in love with you. Have been since that first night in the rain. And I want you here. In my space. In my bed. In my life. Permanently. The confession should have terrified me. Instead, it felt like coming home. I love you too, I admitted. The words both terrifying and liberating. Even though you're impossible and controlling and absolutely insane. Especially because of that, he corrected with a smile. Say yes. Give me everything. Yes. The word came without hesitation this time. Yes to moving in. Yes to being yours. Yes to whatever insane life you're offering. His kiss was tender, triumphant. I'll take care of you. I'll take care of all of you. I swear it on everything I am. I know. And I did. For all his danger, all his darkness, Dmitri Volkov kept his promises. We're yours to protect, until my last breath, he vowed, and probably beyond. 6 months later, the house had become home in ways I never imagined. Emma and Michael had their own wing. Rooms they'd decorated themselves, a playroom that rivaled toy stores, a sense of security that had transformed them from nervous children into confident, happy kids. They called Dmitri Dima now, a nickname he pretended to tolerate but secretly loved. I'd returned to marketing, working from the home office Dmitri had built for me, taking on clients and rebuilding the career I'd thought lost. The trust funds he'd established for the children had grown substantially. Education guaranteed, futures secured. And us. We were complicated and passionate and absolutely insane together. He was still controlling, still protective to the point of obsession. I still fought him on things that mattered, still maintained my own identity within his overwhelming presence, but we worked. Somehow, impossibly, we worked. Tonight was special, though. Dmitri had been tense all week, planning something he wouldn't share. When he asked me to dress formally and meet him in the garden at sunset, I knew something was coming. The garden had been transformed, lights strung through trees, flower petals creating a path, and at the center, Dmitri in a tuxedo that made my heart skip. Emma and Michael stood beside him, dressed up and grinning like they knew a secret. What's all this? I asked as I approached in the dress he'd left on our bed, emerald silk that felt like water. This, Dmitri said, dropping to one knee with a grace that stole my breath, is me making it official. He pulled out a ring, a stunning emerald surrounded by diamonds. The kind of ring that made statements about ownership and forever. Sarah Mitchell, you walked into my life shivering in the rain and turned my carefully controlled world into beautiful chaos. You challenged me, fought me, and somehow loved me despite knowing exactly what I am. You gave me a family I didn't know I needed. A purpose beyond power, a reason to be better than the sum of my sins. Tears were already streaming down my face. Marry me, he continued, his voice rough with emotion. Let me protect you forever. Let me love you officially. Let me give Emma and Michael my name, my resources, my absolute devotion. Make me the luckiest bastard alive and say yes. Yes, I breathed, not needing to think, not wanting to wait. Yes, Dmitri. Always yes. He slipped the ring on my finger, stood and kissed me while our children cheered and his men, our family now, applauded from the shadows. And standing there in his arms, in the garden of the life he'd built for us, I realized something profound. Sometimes the cage isn't a prison. Sometimes it's a shelter. Sometimes the monster isn't the villain. Sometimes he's the hero, and sometimes surrendering to the inevitable isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the bravest thing you can do. I love you, I whispered against his lips. I love you more, he countered, possessive even in affection. My Solnishko, my wife, mine forever. Yours forever, I agreed. And I meant every word.